session will be chaired by Professor Dr. Subhash C. Nondi. Dr. Nondi received the MSc degree in statistics from the University of Calcutta in 1982, the MTech degree in computer science from Indian Statistical Institute in 1985, and the PhD degree in computer science from the University of Calcutta in 1996. He joined Icaa Kolkata in 1986 with the Advanced Computing and Microelectronics Unit. From 1998 to 1999, he was a research associate with the Japan Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, Ishikawa, Japan. In 2000, he was a guest researcher with the City University of Hong Kong. He also visited Carleton University, Ottawa, Canada in 2014. His research interests include algorithmic graph theory and computational geometry. Dear Dr. Nondi, I'm handing over the session to you.
Participation of International Conference on Algorithms and Applications 2025. It is my pleasure to introduce today's distinguished speaker, Professor Sandeep Sen from Ashoka University. Professor Sen is a leading figure in the field of computer science, currently serving as a professor in Ashoka University. His research spans several cutting-edge areas of theoretical computer science, including randomized algorithms, dynamic graph algorithms, geometric algorithms, and approximation, and memory hierarchy models. Prior to his tenure at Ashoka, Professor Sen was a professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at IIT Delhi, where he held several prestigious leadership positions, including head of the department, dean of faculty affairs. Additionally, he served as the dean of the School of Engineering of Shiv Nazar University. In addition to his academic achievements, Professor Sen has a collaborative extensively research in industry research laboratories, including Bell Laboratories, IBM Research, Microsoft Research, etc. He is a fellow of both the Indian Academy of Science and Indian National Science Academy, recognizing his exceptional contribution to the field. Today, Professor Sen will be presenting a talk titled Oblivious Algorithm and Universal Optimality. Let us welcome Professor Sen. Thank you, for that very glowing introduction. And good morning, good afternoon, and good morning yet. Okay. To all my
distinguished professors, organizing committee members, founders, and of course the few students that I see now who were there more in numbers earlier this morning. So it's a pleasure and an honor to be here. All right, to conclude here. Sorry. So yeah. So continuing on that, my being the designated first speaker in a conference, I think this is my first experience. Although I have in my younger days, been an opening batsman, but I've never done it for a conference. Nevertheless, it will be a challenge, and hopefully, it will set the right tone for the conference, for which I think the organizers and the other people who conceived the conference, my best wishes, for success in the first edition, and I hope that the tradition continues and it becomes established as a leading conference in this area, in the area of algorithms, applied algorithms, and other kinds of related applications of algorithms that were mentioned by my previous speakers when they introduced, set the tone for setting the perspective of how the field of computer science and IT has really contributed to a very accelerated pace of development in the last 30-40 years, and expected to continue, probably even in a more rapid mode in the years to come. Although it's not clear at this point that whether we will be in control or we will be controlled. That's the story. Nevertheless, I have a very simple story here, or something that I stitched up over the last 1 month. When Subhashish Majumdar first contacted me regarding delivering this talk, I was a little hesitant, because of my very recent involvement with a lot of administrative responsibilities. I had not been doing a lot of what I consider very exciting work that I wasn't sure that I should be sharing with people. But I thought about it, and I have put together some thoughts which go back a long way, and trying to give it a new perspective. If you think about it like, old wine, new bottles kind of a story. But hopefully, I think there is a trend that I'm going to present will become more important in the days to come, and which kind of it's supposed to redefine the paradigm of algorithm design. So let's see. So without further ado, let me tell you about basically what is meant by oblivious algorithms, and then we'll come to the term universal complexity, and I'll try to show you how these are connected, and probably there is more potential than what exists today. Okay, so let me sort of first make it clear that it's not about what sometimes is referred to as adaptive algorithms. Adaptive algorithms is a term that comes more from, well, here is the ChatGPT sort of definition of adaptive algorithms, is that everything is now supposed to be intelligent, including algorithms. However, there's a caveat that the algorithms are designed by the sharpest of minds, and there is a lot of expectations from an algorithm, a traditional definition of algorithm, which the so-called intelligent algorithms may not be so rigorous about. And the way people think about algorithms now, because it's become much more ubiquitous than what it used to be, maybe 2 decades back, where an algorithm was supposed to be, first of all, a very correct procedure for the job at hand. And of course, it's supposed to converge in reasonable amount of time. Now, these two were the foundations of anyone who wanted to design algorithms. This has been now somehow been, I would say, compromised to some extent because we are in an age where people want more flexibility. So we are talking about ideas or leading to algorithms that refine themselves based on what is the response, and so it's a gradual refinement which also a human designer of algorithms also goes through. But here it's more of data driven. So you start with something and then you gradually refine based on the response, and over a period of time you feel that it is optimized in performance. But all this is happening in an unregulated manner mostly. So adaptive algorithms, although very attractive, one should be very careful about the applications, whether how critical is the application, because there is no real proof of correctness embedded into it, not yet. As well as the how long it will take is almost because there is a trade-off between correctness and efficiency also. So sometimes you sacrifice one for the other. So anyway, the point is that I'm not going to talk about adaptive algorithms, and I'm going to stick to more traditional definition of algorithms. And to some extent, it was inspired by the popularity of adaptive algorithms, that's gaining a lot of steam these days. To see how the traditional algorithms can keep pace with that, and at the same time, retain its purity. So when we design a traditional algorithm, the parameter that we often talk about is this variable called n, which is usually the number of parameters of the given problem. So if you are trying to sort n numbers, so n is that. You're trying to solve a linear programming, then you have a certain number of inequalities, that is m, and also number of variables n. So there are these parameters on which basically the performance of the algorithm is analyzed. So let me take you to basically through some examples, to explain what I mean by a slightly different kind of paradigm, which is not just dependent on this number of parameters that is given to us. So there is this very well studied problem of hidden surface elimination. Anyone who has done a course on graphics or even geometric algorithms will be familiar with this. But nevertheless, as you can see, it's basically the projection problem, right? You have a three-dimensional scene, and on our flat 2D screens, basically, what you want to see is how the scene looks from a particular viewer's location in terms of distance and perspective and so on and so forth. So what these three images are showing is that I can do the projection very easily. The 3D to 2D projection mathematically is a very simple thing. But when it comes to visualizing it, that so there's a little bit of an optical illusion here. The leftmost figure is just the projection, but it doesn't really tell you basically what is visible from a certain location. Now, it could be either of the two things, depending on which part is visible and which is not. So some part is occluded, and some part is visible. So depending on that, so first of all, there is this ambiguity. The second part, of course, is that, for any realistic visualization, which we are doing all the time on computer screens or wherever projections involved, we need basically algorithms given the location of a viewer, okay, to actually paint or render the image that looks realistic. So the wireframe is basically just the plain projection without the visualization part of it. And then as you look down, it looks more and more realistic, when you have removed certain things that are not visible, but otherwise it looks completely confusing. And then all the way to the colors where it becomes more realistic. Now this problem is called the hidden surface elimination, has been known from the time basically you have computer screens, 70s or so. There are more examples, more complicated scenarios like this, where again you have initially just the wireframe, and then as you go on, you are seeing something that looks more realistic. So this is the raw input in some sense, that if you have this 3D scene, I have somehow decomposed into some kind of geometric figures, mostly like triangular figures. But then when I give a position that this is where the viewer is located, then it basically has to render it in the way that it will look to the viewer from that point. So this is basically, let us say, how it looks. And you can see that, the pink one seems to be further beyond, and the blue one is in front of that, so it's occluded by these triangles, right? So it's like, I'm ordering from any given point of view the objects in terms of increasing distances. So in some sense, it's like a sorting problem. Now, what is interesting about this problem is that finally what you see could be much less complicated than the initial input. So if you look at this set of triangles, the uncolored triangles, that's all the objects that are in the scene. But finally, only some parts of this is visible. And you can see that the most, jumbled up part is inside that yellow triangle, which is not even visible because it's actually behind it. So it did not even be rendered. So the final size of what is visible, okay, you can think about it like a planar graph, essentially. Okay? And whatever is the size of the planar graph, okay, should be basically the effort, ideally the effort needed to render it. Okay? Not the entire size of the the image as it was overlaid, which is overlay of all these triangles. Okay? So the complexity of the final scene is much less than the raw projection. So your algorithm should be able to respond to this. It should not basically take time, which is like, showing, starting from the raw image, and which can be very, very, so if in terms of, input size, if there are n triangles, and all these triangles kind of intersect, you are going to basically see about a quadratic amount of intersections, but they may not be all visible, right? So only a few of them may be visible, and that's basically what I'm saying, that the existing algorithms that people use even now, and they were discovered, as I said, 40, 50 years back, something called as K-interest algorithm, Z-workers algorithm, they actually do not take advantage of this. They try to actually paint it from behind and overlay things. So you're actually going through the entire effort of drawing the raw image when only part of it may be visible eventually. Of course, from certain perspectives, everything could be visible, and then it's worth it. So it's not doing ideal amount of work. And this is, very easily understood if I give you a set of line segments, okay, and ask you to report the intersection between the line segments. And that's a simple enough problem, a high school student will understand that with n line segments, there could be n choose to intersections, but there may not be even one intersection. So if an algorithm basically tries to see the potential intersection between every pair of segment, we'll end up doing a quadratic amount of work. But then there are these algorithms that I've listed in the last slide, and it goes back to 1979. So it was, this kind of things were understood a long time back. So n is the size, or basically the number of segments. K is the number of intersections. So you can't actually solve any interesting problem without looking at the entire input, which is n segments. And K is the actual number of intersections. Now K can vary between, 0, which is no intersections, to n square intersections. So you can see this final term of order big O of n plus k is very, very sensitive to the number of intersections. So if the intersection is small, the effort, the algorithm will be much faster. If it is larger, it will be, of course, take more time. And that's basically the natural way or the ideal way that algorithm should be designed. Okay, so let's look at another geometric problem, which is again a very simple problem: the two-dimensional convex hulls, the planar convex hulls. Convex hulls are very important from many applications, in image processing, computer vision, and so on and so forth. But geometrically, it's basically the smallest convex set that includes a set of points that's given to us. So for this set of points, the right-hand side basically shows the outer boundary or outer periphery of those points. Okay? And so this is also an important algorithmic problem, because it's a basic problem that is like used as a pre-processing for many, many other important problems. In fact, it's also known that, if I give you a set of green points and red points, and you want to see if you can separate them. So there's a very, important theorem that says that they are separable, linearly separable, if and only if the convex hulls don't intersect. The convex hulls are extremely important. One of the first algorithm was proposed, goes back to 1972 by John Graham, and he had an optimal n log n algorithm. So n is the number of points here. Okay? So the problem seems to have been settled, and it's a very simple algorithm which kind of doesn't kind of a angular sweep. Okay, let me not get into too much details about that, but you kind of walk. So you've given a set of points, you sort them in an angular fashion, and keep walking along those points and maintain convexity. Okay, so with this approach, basically, you could get that n log n algorithm. And this is, I think, was in a very old IPL paper was published. And there were some simplifications proposed, but in summary, the problem was kind of solved and sealed, 50 years back, more than 50 years ago. So what is interesting about it? Algorithmically. And just to give you a sense of how important the problem is, even, if I look at the problem of half-plane intersections, there is a one-to-one correspondence with this problem. So both these problems have similar nature. Not only that, it was also shown that n log n was the correct lower bound for this problem. So if for n points, you would need at least n log n operations, and it requires a little bit more than what sorting requires, because this is a two-dimensional problem. So there are some algebraic operations that are required, but simpler algebraic operations. Okay. So there were many other algorithms also that were proposed, because it's such an important problem. So one of the things that, again, people doing any course, basic course in geometric algorithms, we told about something called Jarvis March, which does nothing but, look at a set of points, and convex hull is nothing but taking a string and kind of wrapping it over. So it's like a gift wrapping algorithm. So if you do that, okay. Now the convex hull, I did not explicitly say this. So if you look at the figure, the top figure, among so many points that are given to us, finally the convex hull is defined by only what is called the boundary points. Okay, and the boundary points in this example could be much fewer than the given set of points. And on the other hand, you can consider a situation where all the points are on the boundary. So there would be a variation in terms of the size of the final output. So that was not captured by Graham's algorithm, but something that was much simpler. It said, you take a string and wrap around, like gift wrapping. And how many times do we have to wrap? You have to kind of tighten it. You can think about the points as nails. You just try to tie a string around it. So you keep moving it till you hit the next nail, and then you go around it and so on and so forth. So we basically be discovering this H boundary points, and H can vary between the smallest convex hull, which we have about, which will be a triangle, which is 3, all the way to n, right? So this is your H times n algorithm, and something that's very, very basic. Now, how do you compare Graham's algorithm, which is n log n, and was proved to be the best possible, and NH. Well, no comparison really, because for very, very small h, like constant, like triangles, rectangles, whatever, NH will be better. But very quickly, as h becomes log n or more than log n, then Graham's algorithm becomes better. Now, but there's a very simple way to actually reconcile them. You run both of them in parallel. Okay, and whichever runs faster, you abandon the other one and just publish the result. But this doesn't work too well. It is not a very elegant solution. And there are other algorithms also for this very important problem, which I don't want to get into too much details, but I will touch upon in the later part of the talk, the company called merge or recall, etc. But this, this enigma was not really sort of tackled very well until this paper by Kirkpatrick and Seidel, which came up about 15 years after Graham's paper. They actually could design what is called an n log h algorithm. Now, once you have n log h algorithm, then you don't have to worry about whether which is better, because n log h will always be dominated by n log n. It will always be less than n log. And also keep in mind that both in the case of the first problem I said, the hidden surface elimination, and the convex hull problem, we do not know what the output in advance. Okay? So although I'm saying that there is this running time of n log h, who is giving us h? No one is telling us about h. Right? We don't know about this in advance. Yet the algorithm is able to respond magically if the output size is small. Okay? So it's not a part of the input parameter. You do not know what part of the scene will be visible. Okay? You do not know how many intersections will be there in advance. And yet, when you analyze the algorithm, it kind of emerges as the best possible or nearly the best possible for any output size. Okay? And they published this algorithm under this static ultimate convex algorithm, which was essentially a challenge that can you do better? But how much time do I have? So I have to.
So anyone then must have 1 hour, it's fine.
No, I'm fine, but I still want to give you 1 hour. Let's start it. Oh, okay, fine. Thanks. I lost it. Yeah, so they published it under this thing called ultimate convex algorithm. It's like a challenge, can you do anything better? And the way this algorithm worked was here, a little bit of background analysis may be required to understand this. That first of all, you look upon the convex hull as two parts, the upper hull and the lower part. So the red line that I've drawn. So look at the leftmost point, the rightmost point. Now look at the points above and the points below. This is called the upper hull. This is called the lower hull. Okay. So whatever Graham's did, basically, the improved versions basically looked at, or this easier versions looked at basically looking at the hull in its two parts. They are both symmetric, and would just do the upper hull or the lower hull. And the Kirkpatrick-Seidel algorithm essentially worked on, let's say, the upper hulls separately, the lower hull separately, and to construct the upper hull. Okay, what they did was they basically managed to find, so I've just rotated this red line into XY, and it finds basically the kind of the topmost edge, okay, and it divides also the points into more or less equal parts. So then you recursively find the convex hull, upper hull of this part, and the upper hull of this part. Okay? And all the points here can never be on the boundaries of this card. Of course, this is a general scenario. In some special cases, there may not be any points here, and all of them will be here or here. So all that is taken care of, even without knowing what the final size of the hull is. So you can still write what is called a reconciliation. The time constructed convex hull of n points with h boundary points can be now looked at as the decomposition of the two sides So this is the first part, N1 points, and then N2 points, and H1 and H2 are unknown. N1 and N2 will be both less than some fraction. So that's how basically this edge is formed. So it's done by basically writing a linear program, a very small dimensional linear program. And then you solve the recurrence, you get this figure, which basically they claimed, can't do better. And there was, sorry. As I said, the partitioning used a two-dimensional linear program. It was somewhat complex, but still pretty efficient. So that this you could derive this running time out of it. So what it did was, like Bentley Outman, they showed that they could find all the intersections in time proportional to the number of intersections. The cut-practice idea algorithm basically showed that you could find the convex hull in time proportional to n log h, okay, without even knowing what the value of h is. And so that ushered in an era of, I would say, interest in what is called output sensitive algorithms. Okay? And this is not known so well outside the geometry community because this kind of phenomenon is not understood very well in let's say, in the realm of graph algorithms or in the optimization algorithms. But that is what I'm going to address in this talk. So let me shift gears to another separate story, which was in a completely different area altogether, which I'm calling the external memory model. Now, what is an external memory model? So whenever we design algorithms, it is with respect to what are the instruction set that is allowed, right? And you make a certain assumption about the instruction set. And you also assume that the textbook model basically assumes that you have practically infinite memory, which is not the real story. So your computer always has finite amount of memory, but the data could be much, much more than that finite amount of memory. Right? So external memory model basically addressed this, and they came up with a model where it shows that if you're all now aware of all this cache, right? So you have several layers of cache, and you know that I want more cache from my computer to be faster. Right? This is not really captured by the textbook models of algorithms, and it's known, very well known, because this kind of research started back in the late 80s, but it's kind of limited to a small community of people who specialize in designing such algorithms. Okay? But all the time in real life, these are the kind of algorithms that are running. Because on the real machine, you have a finite amount of memory, very small amount of cache, etc. And if you're not careful in designing algorithms, your algorithms could be tremendously slowed down because of the transfer of between the main memory to the lead towards the thrashing, the disk and the main memory and so on and so forth. So these algorithms were designed keeping making a more honest model of the computer. And there are two basically, this is also a simplistic model compared to what the real computer is, but still at least it addressed the essence of the problem, which is, you think about that, you have only capital M amount of memory. You have an input of size n, which is much, much larger than this main memory. So most of the input is not even in the cache or the main memory, it's like somewhere else. And your computer OS is basically going to fetch it on demand. So when you are writing an algorithm, you're not mindful of that, unless you know about the model that you're tackling with. It's a very specialized job. So not everyone can design algorithms without giving it thought. So and B is the size of the memory block, because you're trying to actually access a memory that is, let us say, about 10,000 times slower. So you want to pipeline it to some extent that, when I'm not going to fetch one byte, I'm going to fetch maybe about 10,000 bytes at the same time, because the transfer cost to the 10,000 bytes versus one byte, there's very little difference. So there is some kind of coherence there. So if you've seen it for the first time, you may wonder how does one take advantage of that, and how does one actually think about designing efficient algorithms with this added complication, right? Not just n, the size of the input, but there are these two parameters. And so there is this external memory where most of the data is, and then it is getting transferred in units of size B into the internal memory where you can do all the operations that you want, additional multiplications, subtractions. Let's look at a very simple problem, like transposing a matrix. Now it's been again known for, I think, even goes back to papers in late 60s, by I think papers by Floyd, etc., who realized that at that point you had tapes. So you had a huge matrix to transpose, and transpose is a very simple operation. We never give a minute's thought to that. We just go and write this. You just exchange these two elements, the symmetric diagonal elements for a square matrix, and you get a transpose. Okay. Very simple, linear time. But the moment you bring in the additional factor of the 10,000-fold increase in latency when you're going to fetch it from external memory, then you want to do it more smartly. Okay, that you don't every time you have to incur what is called a memory fault, page fault. Okay? So typically, the matrices are laid down in a two major form. Okay, so when you want to, basically exchange these two, so these are actually not a single element, but you can think about it like a block of elements. So these two blocks must basically, be exchanged, and within the block also they must be transposed. Okay, but you are basically moving along because the memory is linear, so the elements are laid down as all these elements appear before all these elements, before all these elements, and so forth. When you're fetching things from the external memory, you're going to basically pick things in this order. But when you're doing the transpose, then you basically have to write out the elements in this order. So if you have laid down the elements already like this, then this becomes, very inefficient, because then you have to go and again fetch all those elements to bring it to the cache. This is called cache fault, and that could actually make your algorithm become very, very slow. So, well, I think you've got the gist of the problem, and of course the matrix may not always be a square matrix; it could be a rectangular matrix. And in the worst case, you're going to, if you're not careful, you're going to incur a cache miss for every element, and that's going to be too much. That really slows down in as simple as matrix transpose. So the gist of the story is that because of the way the elements are laid out in the memory, you are going to incur difficulty in designing the efficient algorithm of something as simple as transpose. And secondly, if I tell you that I don't even tell you about the parameter MLP. So number of elements I know. So there are these initial efforts, back say in the late 80s or even earlier, where people could be designing these algorithms based on the knowledge of what is the main memory size and what is the block size. And once you know that, what you could do is you could, make sure, if I knew what size of the main memory is, I could design my algorithm in such a way that both these blocks would fit into the main memory at the same time, do the local things, and then put it back. So you're not going to incur too much cost. But suppose I even think of it that way, that I don't even tell you what the memory is. And the reason being that you're writing a code that could run in any architecture. How do you know beforehand as a programmer, what is the size of the memory? So without that knowledge, it's difficult to even do that. So basically, it's about what is called a spatial locality. Okay? But this was shown that it could be done by some kind of recursive procedure. Okay? The recursive procedure is also very easily described. If you think about the matrix as the two submatrices, where I'm just splitting a matrix into these two parts vertically. Okay, and then you recursively basically again transpose. You create these A1 transpose and A2 transpose. They are going to be recursive. So this method, okay. Let me not take you through too much details. Would with a certain assumption that I don't know M and B, I only know that M is at least square of the block size. Under this assumption, people could write this kind of a recurrence. Then writing the recurrence, I can use whatever M and whatever B I want. It is not being used as a part of the design, but it is being used only as part of analysis. So whatever M or B is, regardless of that, you're going to get this kind of a running time, which is so many block transfers. There are M n elements, so there has to be at least M n over B block transfers. And you can achieve this performance, okay, just by writing this reference and without the knowledge of M n. So this is also something not very different from the phenomenon we saw before in terms of hidden surface elimination or convex hulls, where even if I didn't know the output size, my algorithm would magically adapt to this. And it's just coming out of the way the recurrences are being written. And not only that, there is another, very interesting thing that you don't have only just one level of cache, you can have multiple levels of cache. And this is happening simultaneously at any layers of cache. So I can't simultaneously try to optimize, even if I know all the parameters. But this, being completely oblivious in its approach, is able to address all of these simultaneously. Okay. The similar story goes for what is called oblivious sorting. This is slightly more technically involved, so I won't spend much time on it, except I'll say that there is something called, so this is it's again a recursive way of sorting, where you do what is called, for n elements, you do n to the power 1/3 way merge sort, and recursively sort these n to the power 2/3 sequences. And you do this recursion also, sorry, the merging also recursively. Normally, merge sort, you do the merging directly. Here, you do the merging also recursively. To again address this problem about not knowing those parameters. And this thing that looks like a funnel actually leads to the name of the algorithm called a funnel sort. Okay. So let me not get into the details of that, but essentially, again, the story is similar. You write the right recurrences, okay, and you get a bound that is actually provably optimal, even without the knowledge of MNB. Okay. And this was done before with the knowledge of MNB. Now you can do this without the knowledge of MNB. This happened sometime in the late 90s. Okay, let me jump back into the convex hull story. Okay, so we left it off at the Kirkpatrick cycle that n log h bound, which the claim was the ultimate convex hull. So even though it was actually complicated in the beginning because it used some invocations of two-dimensional linear programming, people managed to simplify it to the extent that it became almost like what is called quick hull, which is analog of quicksort. And it's again, details are not very important. You just pair the points and then choose a random direction based on those pairings, and you get something that is, and you can write the recurrence and get a same bound like a vertical cycle, but now which is much simpler, okay, and also probably constant-wise faster, although asymptotically it can't be faster than log h. Okay. And like quick sort, you can also get what is called concentration bounds for this. Fine. So now we have basically something called a quick hull, which matches the Kirkpatrick saddle bound of n log h. So you basically got everything, best of both worlds. You got the simplicity, you got the best possible. So what is it? What are we looking for next? Okay. So here is the next development. Okay. So again, this is the upper hull part. Okay, I don't know what the upper hull is like, but then I can think about the upper hull as these boundary points, and I can drop these, create these vertical slabs, okay, from the boundary points. And there are points that are not on the hull, but actually part of the input. They're the scale points. So let's assume that there are ni points in the ith slab, and there are h points on the output. H is my output size, which is not known to me. Neither do I know what is Ni, because I don't even know H. And yet you can obtain a running time, which is this expression. Now, this expression would be familiar to people who have dealt with information theory. This is actually the kind of an entropy bound. So Ni is the number of points in the ith slab, which is not known to the algorithm designer. And there is this term of log of n over Ni. And this bound can be obtained without any prior or explicit knowledge of N1, this vector N1. It's just an artifact of the analysis. Except that, let me just point out that this expression, this somewhat complicated looking expression, is always bounded by, so here, so I'm sorry, I used K instead of H. It's always bounded by, so if you think about K as H, here there's a notational problem, then it's always less than N log H. Okay? And in many cases, much better than N log H. It can be even as good as ordinary. So you have a running time that actually is better than the competitive cycle stuff. For different situations, it may be even strictly better than that. So this problem for the convex cells, I'm now using another problem which is called the maximal points problem, which is okay. So let me just try to explain. I have a set of points, and these staircases that I'm creating, this any point on the staircase, okay, is not you. If you look at the positive orthot, based on this point, there are no points here, and that's why this point is called a maximal point. Whereas any point inside, if you look at the orthot, there will be some points inside in this orthot, and therefore they're not maximal points. The staircase is basically defined as maximal points. And again, the number of maximal points could vary depending on the problem instance. It could vary between, let's say, 1 to being all the points on the staircase. So I'm shifting to maximal problem because the convex cell is slightly technically harder to deal with. So I'll be able to explain the result easier, more easily with respect to the maximal. So here, the identical bound can be proved, and convex, like convex cells, this also has a bound of the same competitive decimal algorithm works in N log each time. Just like a very short description of the algorithm, what you do is you just find the middle, not middle point, you find the median, divide the point into two sets, find this staircase, okay, and recurse on both sides. That's how we get this potential. And what happens, the analysis is simply how many times, so every time you call it recursively, the points have to be split. So how many points, how many times does the point basically have to get split before it is picked up within a staircase? So that analysis gives this bound potential. This actually goes back again a long way. So, I mean, something that I did about 25 years back, 98. And one can prove a matching over bound for these expressions. Now, at that point of time, let me confess that I initially was very excited that I got something which looks something very fundamental, brings out an entropic view of things, but I could not extend it to other domains. But the fundamental thing is that it's showing a very basic dependence to what looks like a basic property of the input in terms of the entropy. But there were some shortcomings, and in fact, one of the shortcomings was that it was defined with respect to the horizontal, the vertical segments. But entropy need not be just vertical. Okay? And this is the part basically, about 15 years later, was addressed in another paper who managed to extend the analysis. So there was not much activity of this thing. And I also had, got busy with other problems, and I didn't find motivation to pursue this in other problem domains. And they managed to extend this to this notion of structural entropy. Again, it's technical, but in a nutshell, what they did was, instead of just looking at the vertical things, they said that you can partition it into any kind of boxes and do the same analysis and get the same bound, but you are no longer limited to what they call vertical entropy. So they call it the structural entropy at the same bound, but it holds in a more in a more general situation, in the sense that you can choose the entropy that suits the best, because the vertical entropy may not be the lowest, some other entropy with the lowest, so it matches that bound. And they could even prove a lower bound based on that, like we could. And it also extends to the convex cells, like the earlier algorithm also extends to the convex cells. So there was this development, okay? But then again, it couldn't go beyond the geometric thing. So it could just be extended to 3D convex cells with a lot more technical challenges. But the upshot is that you have a bound that is better than the matrix out of status bound. Now, what's really happening? You have three expressions. Okay? The expression on the leftmost side is the most sort of defined expression. This is the one that Graham started with, n log n. N log h turned out to be better than n log n. And this is again upper bounded by n log h. Okay? And it may be slightly intrigued that all these were proved to be lower bounds. So how can all these be lower bounds and still get improvements? Okay? So that is not too difficult to see, and that is basically based on this. They are crafted on the basis of certain input instances. So the way that you parameterize will lead you to a certain kind of a bound. So the more refined the parameterization, you can actually get a better bound. Okay? And these parameters are not even explicit parameters. So just to give you a sense of why n log h was a lower bound, the lower bound required this particular construction where the points were distributed exactly like this. And there are a certain number of ways to distribute the n balls in h boxes, and the worst case led to this n log h bound. But if the points are scattered arbitrarily, okay, then you can actually overcome that bound and get this as well. Okay? So it all depends on basically how you parameterize the problem, how you think about the problem, and not always think about what is the worst case. Okay? So this is basically what I'm coming to now. There is a hierarchy of parameterization. Okay? So you have, let us say, n and n prime are two sets of parameters where n is a subset of n prime. So when we are considering only input as a parameter, n was a parameter. When I added h was an added parameter. So you basically, as you have a graded parameterization, okay, then I'm calling this as granular complexity, that p of n prime is a more granular parameterization compared to this, and this is advantageous if this is always bounded by this, and in many cases this will be strictly better than this. So this is what I'm calling as the granular complexity of a problem. Now, how many problems basically are amenable to this? We don't know. So what I'm now going to basically do is kind of being prescriptive as how maybe algorithm designers should consider changing the goalposts, not just thinking about worst case. So what is worst case? Is that you have these inputs and you have the behavior of the algorithm. So the xy basically is an input, and your running time is basically this peak. So for some inputs, your algorithm is going to incur large cost. And if I'm happy with basically that this large cost that I'm incurring is the best possible for the large cost, I say that my algorithm is optimal. But what happens to the lower peaks? Okay. My algorithm may be very good for the worst cases, but my algorithm is not as satisfactory. And that's exactly where the opportunity is, right? That's exactly where I would say, even though there is no real explanation of why some of these machine learning algorithms are working very well, it may be basically because that they are able to do well on these easier cases, which of course we can't analyze because we don't even know how it really works. No one really knows how they work, but at least on the basis of evidence, that may be the reason why it is so. So then, to keep the motivation of the algorithm designers growing, we need to respond to this. That it's no longer just the straight-jacketed worst case complexity, but we need to look at the entire spectrum. Okay. Now, of course, there have been efforts. So here is how we define basically the worst case complexity. That well, I mean, don't bother to read this. I'm just going to say this: that this algorithm A is worst case optimal if you look at all possible algorithms in this for a given problem, and you look at the min-max. So you look at the performance of the algorithm A star on all possible inputs, look at the worst case, okay, and look at the best possible algorithm with respect to the worst case. That's the min-max. So we are happy as long as we are doing this. But then, and there is a slight suboptimality factor, not every algorithm is going to be optimal. But then, if you want to address the other aspect, you may, so this is obsessed with the bad inputs. You can actually go down to what is called the notion of instance optimality, which was actually described in the paper just following the distribution sensitive paper where I said that they fix the structure, they gave the definition of the structure entropy. So they defined the notion of instance optimal, okay, where what you're saying is that for every instance, my algorithm is going to be matching the best possible algorithm for that instance. Okay, so for every instance, you could have a specialized algorithm. Okay, and this my algorithm somehow will magically be able to be competitive with the best possible for that instance. And there could be not just one algorithm, but there are 4 family of algorithms for different instances. Okay? So here you are basically really challenging yourself that whatever be the instance, I want to do as well as possible. Okay. Now the danger is that if we get down to specifying the instance, absolutely the bare bone thing, then there is nothing left to be specified. The entire input is there, so it's like hard coding it. So that's not a very useful definition. Right? So you go a little beyond this, and that's something that happened very recently. So what is this notion of universal optimality? So I'm basically finally coming to the explanation of the title, what I mean by universal optimality. So the universal optimality basically says that we can't fix the entire input, but part of the input. So this input is I, but let us say some part of the input is variable. So it's being maximized over. So I'm not fixing everything. I'm giving some latitude. Okay. So within that latitude, for every instance, my universal optimality should be able to be competitive with the best possible for that instance within that latitude of I. Okay. And so this looks like a more reasonable definition or definition of optimality to it. And this actually emerged came up in a very recent paper which got the best paper award in Fox in October, that even something like Dijkstra's algorithm, which was not known to be truly optimal, they could actually show it to be universally optimal under this definition. Okay? So good news is that it's gone beyond geometry, but it's not really in the paradigm of that, the obliviousness that I was aiming for. And just a few words about how it compares with some of these other things. So as I said, average case complexity has been known, but average case does not, it requires the notion, the knowledge of input distribution, which is never known. We make an assumption, okay? And you get this average, assuming some distribution, probability distribution of the inputs. Even though it may have a very good average performance, it doesn't say anything about the worst case or the best case and things like that. Average is just average. So for sorting, for instance, it is known that the average and the worst case have the same complexity, but on the other hand, very little is known even about for sorting in terms of instance optimality or universal optimality, even the problem like that. Right? And so people who are familiar with the word smooth complexity, it's not really related to either smooth complexity. And there is also this, I'm saying that, oblivious algorithms are the ones that will be designed on the basis of implicit parameters. Okay. Sometimes you actually can design an algorithm by estimating it. So say for the output size H, you can estimate H and you can try different values of H, and eventually you can get a good algorithm. Okay, so again, oblivious algorithm will not be strictly following this. So I would say that this kind of approach where you estimate, it may be called a pseudo universal algorithm. Uh, Other paradigms like fixed parameter tractable also doesn't quite fall into this domain. And although some of the FPT algorithms like set cover, you can do without estimation, but most of it, the recent developments that require actually explicit knowledge of the parameter. So, last slide. So finally, what I'm proposing is a proposal basically. That designing universally optimal algorithm is, I think, a very important direction of algorithm design in the traditional sense, especially to be competitive with the ML kind of story, because the ML is probably playing in that range of, for certain input instances it is doing well, but other instances we don't even know. But algorithm design, if we do it very rigorously according to this definition, will be competitive with whatever, and we have all the guarantees. That's the oblivious design seems like a very effective, right? But then it's not clear what the scope is, how difficult it is. Okay, so for some problems, there has been some success. Maybe with more thought, and people really target it, I'm sure there'll be more success. Maybe one has to even refine more of these notions. I said oblivious design is very ambitious. I don't know the parameters. How many parameters should I choose? Depends on the problem. Okay. Some kind of standardization may be required there. Also, universal complexity is also very, very strong notion of demand. Okay. And lastly, what is the role of the lower bounds? The lower bounds are very, very difficult animals. It's very difficult to do lower bounds about anything actually. So without knowing the lower bounds, how do we approach algorithm design with the objective of universal optimality, aided by the paradigm of previous design? Okay. So that's best what is. Sorry for, I think I've gone over a bit. Thank you. Think about that. So let me give you the example that the Dijkstra algorithm is. So I fix the graph. Okay, that's part of it. But I don't fix the weights. Because if I fix the graph, I fix the weights. It's a fixed problem, and that is a fixed solution, and someone can compute it in advance. Okay, so again, the whole notion of algorithm design, complexity theory, is really what should I say? It's one of the ambiguities is about pre-processing. How much pre-processing should I allow? And if the pre-processing is not clear, then for a fixed input, like if I fix the graph, I fix the weights, what is there? I can solve it in advance to you. So it'd be very difficult to compete with that. So what these people did is they fixed the graph, but they didn't fix the weights. So the weights is the undefined part of the input, and you're only competing against those algorithms that will be very good with any kind of weight.
But it can be very problem specific.
Yeah, absolutely. These are going to be very problem specific, and therefore it's more laborious, requires much more thought, and to some extent, it cannot be very general. That's the reason maybe people have avoided it. But I think we can't avoid it any longer. Yeah.
Yeah, this is not really a question, but more of a comment. So it looks like you are taking up the crusade as your last resort to fight against ML algorithms, what you said 1.5 years back.
The crusade is not that. The crusade is basically about when people will come to the senses.
Okay, thank you.
So how do you visualize the domain of NP-complete problem vis-a-vis this Then we
Well,
will-
that would be probably the most ambitious thing to attempt, is designing an oblivious algorithm for, let's say, something like traveling salesman problems, where the running time would be sensitive to some kind of difficulty level of the graphs. Now, in complexity theory again, the main problem is how you distinguish between hard instances and easier instances, because that's extremely algorithm dependent. There is no strict definition of hardness only with respect to a problem. So for a certain algorithm, certain instances will be very easy and certain instances will be hard. Okay? So if I can design an algorithm for TSP that will be competitive against all kinds of approaches, so it could become exponential, because otherwise you would have solved it problem. But again, for many instances where we know that there is a easy way to not easy, relatively easy algorithm for TSP, for many kind of graphs that fluctuating graphs, this or that. So it will magically adapt to some implicit parameters and give you a running time that is very attractive. But it's going to degrade when the instance becomes very hard. It's not predictable.
So the function can, form a polynomial.
The function can behave in some arbitrary way, but at least for all the known easy instances, it should be competitive with that. But it's like way out. When I stumbled across this, I was thinking in those terms, but I realized that I don't even have a model to deal with, simpler problems. But I think more people giving thought to it. See, there is actually some work happening over the last 20 years, which is led by, I think, Dyer, basically, that they have this existential bound for, not TSP, but Hamilton cycle. So for certain kind of random graphs, the Hamilton cycle exists, so it is a probabilistic thing. And then they managed to even get an algorithm, polynomial time algorithm matching that. Okay. Now, it requires a lot of tweaks. So, basically it's running many things in parallel. So if you can actually design one single algorithm, okay, which will find that Hamilton cycle in the cases that where it can be found, and in the others, basically it will degrade into something. That would be like the smooth, in some sense, smoothing, but not smooth complexity.
The engineers often use heuristic algorithms, depending on, I think, so they get good performance, but they cannot give you the flat.
You can't go very good the guarantees for the worst case behavior, right? So this approach basically is that it should be able to match any heuristic, and at the same time also match on the bad cases.
And the oblivious algorithm we are talking about, this is more general than that.
Oblivious algorithm is one way to address this kind of thing, because it somehow seems to have a lot of implicit, almost like saying that it has the right way of attacking the problem, so that it is dealing with parameters that are really important to the problem, and so that requires a lot of thought, right? So it could change over time.
So this is general than the cache oblivious algorithms, right?
Yeah, so cache oblivious is also oblivious. Okay, so I'm borrowing the word oblivious from there. Okay, I'm saying that oblivious seems to be a good paradigm for universal optimality, but there may be other approaches.
Could be analogous to non-deterministic finite automata, as if like an oracle will understand the parameters that there is.
Well, non-deterministic, we still do not really have, other than just brute force unfolding, we do not have any way of doing it. Here it's constructive. When you're talking about algorithms, it's constructive. The non-determinism is, of course, the design part. All designs are non-deterministic. But the algorithm itself has no non-determinism. It may also happen that some of the existing algorithms, like even what was shown for Dijkstra's algorithm, they didn't change the algorithm. They just reanalyzed it, put it under a different lens, and showed that their data structure is able to address the universal optimality, is actually giving them universal optimality. Like, in the case of the distribution sensitive or the instance optimal algorithms, the points, the way the algorithm, the analysis captured it, okay, it's it's not very different from Kirkpatrick cycle. It's more of an analysis. So it's more in the analysis. How many parameters are getting captured there? And there is no limit on the number of parameters. It's a whole vector of parameters. It's not like parametric algorithm. A lot of people ask us. Parametric search is just one parameter. And this was also known many years before the word was coined, in terms of, small dimensions and things like that.
Because one very good user and this one Japanese scientist, Japanese computer scientist, he has been working on finding the maximum tree for the last 20 years. So he said that he has done so many things. Even in the human hypothesis, based on certain parameters, he's still going to find the maximum tree in the shortest time. Whatever algorithm you do, these algorithms cannot be better. Very interesting.
So I don't know. Again, I mean, I certainly trust what he's saying, given that his experience. But what he may be doing is that taking all the known heuristics and running them in parallel. But the goal of Oblivious is not that. I mean, that I said is that would be pseudo universals. The goal of this is that one single algorithm basically will be able to sort of pick up all these things. Yes, absolutely. It's basically identifying what is making the algorithm behave in a certain way, and that requires a lot of introspection. Why it is not behaving in a certain way. So again, I mean, without any criticism about worst case optimality, which I also devoted my entire life to, you just get satisfied if I can match the worst case optimal bounds. Okay, and then I don't bother about how the algorithm is behaving for other instances. And that is precisely what, nowadays many senior algorithm people believe, that where the algorithm community missed the bus, that they were just too obsessed with this one thing. And that gave opportunity to many more people to jump in, and even without very sophisticated techniques, they could always beat you on something, right? So here I'm saying that you can't beat me on anything, basically. So I have not only the best for the worst case, I have the best for every other cases. And there is just one algorithm that is, doing the work for me. Immense pleasure.
So much, sir. I would request our session chair to kindly felicitate Professor Shil. Thank you, Mr. Reshwadi, sir, to kindly felicitate Professor Shil. So we are already running late, a little late maybe, but we'll start our next session directly. It is our first technical session. This is on track A, and this will be chaired by Professor Dr. Shushmita Shurkole. Professor Shurkole has been a faculty member in the Advanced Computing and Microelectronics Unit of the ISI Kolkata since 1999. She has been associated in various capacities with Jadavpur University, University of Nebraska-Lincoln, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Princeton University, and Intel Corporation USA. Her research contributions are in the areas of algorithmic design automation for VLSI physical design, fault modeling and testing, synthesis of quantum computers and graph algorithms. She has served on several prestigious editorial boards and is a distinguished member of several technical communities in India and abroad. Among other awards, she was the recipient of the President of India Gold Medal at IIT Kharagpur, IBM Faculty Award, Distinguished Alumnus Award, Women in Technology Leadership from VLSI Society of India. Dear Professor, I'm handing over the session to you.
Let's get started. We have 3 papers session. This is a session on discrete algorithms. The first paper is paper ID 22. Professor Sandeep Saxena of IIT Kanpur, I believe, he will be the presenter. And I request Professor Saxena to please present. See sorted range selection and range minimum queries, authored by Wasim Akram and Sanjeev Saxena. Yes.
I'm from IIT Kanpur and I'm Sanjeev here. Yes, I'm going to speak on sorted range selection and range minimum queries. In range minimum query, we are given an array of n items and we are given 2 indices I and j, and I like to import the smallest item between ai and aj in constant time. We are allowed to pre-process the in sorted range selection, we are given an extra index key and we like to report k smallest items in order between ai and aj. So here the difference is we have to report k items in order instead of just one item. So this is generalization of the previous problem. There are algorithms which take linear space and order k query time. Pre-processing time is n log n. If I choose k to be equal to n, we are effectively saying report all items in sorted order, which basically amounts to sorting, hence the earlier algorithm is optimal. However, the earlier algorithm uses complicated results. Here we are going to present an extremely simple algorithm, which I think most of you will think is very simple, using only range minimum queries, which I will discuss later, and the usual binary as black boxes. Assume that I have a which I'm going to sort, which I pre-process for range minimum queries, and I initialize the heap to be empty. I pick up the minimum item, let's say it's AR, and insert a 4 tuple, the key value, AR, the smallest item, the index of the smallest item, and the range 1 to n in which the item is smallest. And I repeat the following k times. So basically, if I assume that the minimum item is AX, I look at this set from I to x minus 1 and find the minimum item, that says AB. I look at this set from x minus plus 1 to j and find the minimum item AK. So in each iteration, I find the minimum item in the heap. Let's say the key value is AX. The item has index X, and this is the minimum item from sub-array AI to J. I output the pair, the key value of the index X over X, and then insert P, key value AP, the range I to X minus 1, AP is the minimum in the heap. Similarly, I do a range block value, find the index Q of the minimum item, X plus 1 to J, and insert as notable minimum item, the index of the minimum item, the range where it is minimum in the heap. That is all what the algorithm is for this flow. The correctness is obvious because the next smallest item is always in the heap. In each iteration, we are deleting one item and we are inserting two items. So after k iterations, the heap size cannot be more than 2k. Hence, time for each iteration will be order of 4. For the total query time will be just k into order of k into log k. The pre-processing time is linear, assuming that we can do pre-processing for range of query in linear time. The space is again order n, and the query time is k log k. And again, if I choose k to be equal to n, the total query time will be n log n. Other possible optimal trade-off. That is, if you want an optimal algorithm for this problem, either use the early algorithm or use the proposed algorithm. There is no other trade-off possible for this trade. And we also studied this problem in time based. Let me explain why no other optimal trade-off is possible. Assume that the pre-processing time is Bn, and let's assume for sake of argument that Bn is less than n log n, for example. And let's assume that the average query time per item is Qn in worst case. So consider the following algorithm to sort n numbers. Do a sorted range query with k is equal to n. The total time taken to sort by this algorithm will be Pn, the time for pre-processing, plus n times the query time. Assuming that sorting, this is assumption by the way, assuming that sorting requires n log n time, and if Pn is less than n log n, this term has to be n log n, which means Qn has to be order. So what my contention is that this extremely simple algorithm is the only other possible trade-off for this particular problem. Now look at the other problem which I am using as a black box, that is agent of query. I am taking the algorithm from Wikipedia. Basically, the algorithm is for each value of I compute at most log n values, compute the minimum of AI and AI plus 1, AI plus 1, AI plus 2, AI to AI plus 2 square, AI to AI plus 2 raised to the power, and store these values in arrays. B0 I stores from AI to I is to I plus 2 is to of 0. B2 stores from I to I is to of 2 square, and BRI stores from I is to I to I plus 2 is to of 1. Here the assumption is that I plus 2R should be less than 2. So pre-processing time taken is at most n log n, and space is also at most n log n, because for each value of I am storing log n numbers, and computing each of these numbers will take log n time. The query is also straightforward. Let's assume I want, again, all this is from Wikipedia. This is a standard algorithm. Assume that the query is find the minimum item between I and j. I find the difference, j minus I, and count how many bits are there in the difference. The number of bits is k, and 2 is the power of k, the largest power, which is less than this. So basically, if I I have already computed the value of the minimum item from AI to AI plus 2 raised to the power of k, and I stored this in PKI. And I've also computed the minimum value from Kj, K of j of minus 2 raised to the power of k, and stored in this part. This part is common to both this term and this term. So I take the smaller of these two terms and smaller of these two terms output, so the query time is constant. Now let us describe improvement to this. This is basically the standard tip which we use in parallel algorithms to make the algorithm optimal. I divide the array into n over log n blocks, each of log n items. For each block, I find the minimum item in the block. I also find the smallest item from start of the block, and I also find the smallest item till end of the block for each block. Both these require a simple for loop. If you use the normal algorithm to find the minimum, you're actually finding the prefix minimum else. And if I do from the other end, you will be finding the suffix. Then we also pre-process each block independently and separately for pre-process each block independently and separately for range minimum query using the best algorithm which I know. To begin with, this is the Wikipedia algorithm. And then the minimum ith block is stored in S of I. Then we process S using the standard Wikipedia algorithm. So basically, except for this step, everything is fixed. Here we are saying use the best algorithm, which is Wikipedia to begin with. The first algorithm. And S is of n log n, processing S using the wiki algorithm to take n log n, log of n over log n, which is ordered in time and space. Pre-processing each block except for the last step will take log n time, and total time will be n over order n because they are n over log n blocks. Pre-processing time for last step using the Wikipedia algorithm will be log n into log of log n, which is log n times double log n. As there are n over log n blocks, total pre-processing time for all the blocks will be n over log n multiplied by this term, which is n log of log n. So basically, in one step, I have reduced the pre-processing time from n log n to order of n log of log n. The space remains order n and the query time remains constant. Query part. Let me assume that I'm interested in finding the minimum item between L and R. Let us consider the first case with L and R in different blocks. I find the index I of the block containing L. I find the index R J of the block containing R. And I look at the array S which I have pre-processed for range minimum queries and find the range minimum. So if this is L, this is R. Pre-processing gives me the minimum item from here to here. Next, I have computed the suffix minimum. So I know the minimum item from here to here. And let us say that is the index alpha. We have computed the prefix minimum of this block. So we know the minimum item from here to here. Let us say that is beta. Index is beta. So I find the minimum of three numbers, Sk, the minimum returned by the range minimum query, A of alpha and A of beta, and that will give me the required minimum. The second case with L and R in the same block, as we have pre-processed each block for range minimum queries, this is an intra-block query, and the answer will take constant time. Finally, let me describe a practical algorithm for this problem. Instead of using the Wikipedia algorithm for pre-processing, I use the algorithm which I just described for pre-processing each block. So basically, what I just showed was that there is an M double logging time algorithm for pre-processing, processing instance of size m, I use that algorithm for pre-processing each block. As each block size is log n, the pre-processing time for each block is going to be log n m into log of this term log m, which is log iterated 3 times of n. As the n over log n blocks, the total pre-processing time becomes n log of log of log of n. Question is, why am I calling this a practical algorithms? The number of atoms on Earth is less than 36 into 10 raised to the power 50. How did I get this number? I just multiplied the Avogadro's constant, which all of us remember from our school days, 6 into 10 raised to the 23, multiplied by mass of the Earth, which is again 6 raised to the 27 in grams, and the quoted resistance. If I take log once, all logs are to base 2. I get number which is around 172, which is less than 256. Take a second log, 8. Take a third log, and 3 is a small number for practical purposes. Theoretically, I can repeat the above method 8 times. The pre-processing times can become n log of log iterated 8 times of n. The space will remain order n, and the query time will become order k. They are complicated algorithm to reduce the pre-processing time to order in 3 minutes. We also look at the dynamic sorted range minimums problem. Dynamic sorted range selection problem. Here I can allow the items to be inserted or deleted or value change. So instead of using the static range minima structure, we use the dynamic range minima structure. If I use the standard structure for this interval, the time taken for query and update is log n by double log n. So total time is k log k, this part. I also propose, we also propose a very simple solution for dynamic range minima query and update, which takes log n time, and range selection will take order k log n time. And let me take 1 minute, which I have to describe that algorithm. As much as I can, then I'll stop after 1 minute. So basically, we construct a complete and full binary tree over n over log n leaves. At each node, I store the number of items in the subtree rooted as that node, and the minimum item in each subtree. So at each leaf, I'm storing between log n and 2 log n numbers. The range minimum query is I and j. We first locate the leaves containing the indices. Then from the leaf I and j, we move upwards till we reach a common node k. The minimum value is among the nodes which are on the right of the ik path and left of the ij path. My time is not over. Let me go to the next slide. To locate the leaf containing index I, we slice v to the root and a counter c to vi. We locate the leaf v having number c as, sorry, I think my time is up, so let me just. So basically, I presented as a very simple algorithm for sorted range minima problem, and I show that this is the only other possible trade-off. I also presented a practical, which is almost in-a-time algorithm for range minima query. I wanted to present a simple dynamic algorithm, but I didn't have time for that. The significance of a dynamic algorithm is that queries are now on the indices rather than on the. So we are saying, given I and j after insertion and deletion, what is the minimum item between them? Open problems. And the array may get modified by outputting the items. We're not taking care of that. And get simple and critical algorithms. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Saxena. We have time for a couple of questions. So I have a simple question. So this is for, if I understand, this is for a one-dimensional range minimum query. And would it be very easy to extend it to k-dimensional?
Easy for this. It's not easy. But there are range minima algorithms for higher dimensions.
Exactly.
They're not easy. And the simple method will not work.
Right, and would this kind of trade-off always work? But because in different dimensions, the should I say, the dominance would be different, and so the paraoptimal would be different.
So I don't think it will work for high dimensions.
Right.
But my contention, madam, is that simple algebra query is a very important data structure.
Sure.
And it is used in several problems. At least I have used in computation geometry,
Right.
pattern matching, and so on.
Right.
So I think that's itself is interesting.
Yeah.
High dimension, the structures are there, but I have not seen anyone using them. They are theoretically, yes, they are there, 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions. Given an area of 2 dimensions, 2 indices I is in the area 5 dimensions. But I'm not seen any applications of it.
A lot of machine learning algorithms, I mean, most of them have, they pertain to high dimensional feature space. So in that case, these sort of range query kind of algorithms are applicable in high dimension
It's
ones.
a very high dimension space and the constant vector just blows. Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Any more questions? If not, thank you, Professor Saxena. Let's move on. Next paper number 93 to be presented by Nilanjana Basu. And the title of the paper is Density Extrema of Integer Points and Standard Distance.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Nilanjana G. Basu. Today, I am going to present our work, Density Extrema of Integer Points in Standard Hexagons. My co-authors are Professor Subhashish Majumdar and Professor Partha Bhogi. Let me first give you the notion of density. For a case of unweighted points, density of a 2D region is expressed as the count of the points present in that region per unit area. For a set of weighted points, the density is equal to the sum of the weight of the points present per unit area. Here you can see that some basic shapes are there. For example, in this circle, the radius is 2 and the number of pixels present are 13, and so the density will be 13 by 4 pi. There are some applications in image analysis and related areas apart from different branches of physical science. In this work, we considered uniform rectilinear grid in 2D, and all the input points are present in each intersection of the grid lines, and they are called the grid points. And these points are assumed to have integer coordinates and so referred as integer points. In 2D, these integer points are referred as pixels. Density of regular hexagons is the number of integer points present in the hexagon per unit area, and by standard hexagon we refer to the regular hexagon whose opposite sides are parallel to either x-axis or y-axis. Here is for your reference a standard hexagon with radius 5 and the center is integral. Our initial motivation comes from the IPL paper of Majumdar et al., where they introduced a new concept called density. They have mainly worked on axis parallel region and proved some novel results. They have proved that maximum density axis parallel region will contain any 2 of the given points, and minimum density axis parallel region will contain any 1 of the given points. This concept extends naturally to digital spaces where contributing points again are assumed to lie at intersection of a grid line, which is typically rectangular, but the grid can be hexagonal as well as triangular. We have provided some, observed some nice results for uniform weight points present at every grid point of a rectilinear grid for circular floor, for square, cube, and hypercube, n-dimensional hypercube, for L1 balls, that means diamond and octahedron. So this table we are presenting here along with our previous results, and at the last row our new results. So we can see that there are different LP balls, and density extremas of these LP balls you can see under different constraints. So here C is the center, which can be either integral or real, and R is the radius, that also can be integral or real. Here we can see that for real radii, the density extremas for every LP balls are coming with very smaller radii. But in case of integer radii, the behavior changes drastically, and it poses a fascinating unresolved research problem, which to the best of our knowledge has not been addressed before. So though standard hexagons are not LP balls, we have chosen the standard hexagon in this work for their inherent properties and different uses various across domains. Again, a standard hexagon in 2D is a regular hexagon with 2 opposite sides parallel to either x-axis or y-axis. We consider standard hexagon with integer center, so they are specified by their radii only. In this work, we have provided result for integral radii as well as real radii. We denote by H as a hexagon, real hexagon of radius R, and the set of pixels present in the real hexagon record is the digital hexagon, and the density rho R is equal to the cardinality of the digital hexagon divided by 3 root 3 by 2 R square, where 3 root 3 by 2 R square is the area of the real hexagon. So this is first cube hexagon with odd integer radii R, and these are some pixel containment and densities. So before proving our different lemmas and theorems, we have made a very crucial observation. For a hexagon without any pixel on its boundary, if we shrink the hexagon along one of its diagonal, keeping its center fixed until it reaches a point on its boundary, then we will get a hexagon with same number of pixels but lesser area and results into a hexagon of higher density. So we need to remember that any candidate hexagon with maximum density will always be the one which has at least one point on its boundary. In the similar manner, any candidate hexagon for minimum density will be the one which do not have any points on its boundary. This is our first lemma, which shows that how we are counting the number of pixels present in a standard hexagon of odd radii R. So here we see that we divide the HR into 3 parts. An axis aligned rectangle of size R cross root 3R. Let us go to our picture. Say for R equal to 5, you can see here that the axis aligned. I'm sorry for the quality of the graphic. So these are the axis aligned rectangle here, whose number of columns will be R and number of rows will be at the up, it will be floor of root 3 by 2R. At the down of the center, it will be floor of root 3 by 2R. And so total number of points will be equal to R multiplied by twice floor of root 3 by 2R plus 1. And why this plus 1? To consider the points on the axis, on the center, on this line. Let me show you here. So on this line, this will be plus 1. Along with this axis aligned rectangle, there will be 2 congruent isosceles triangles on the opposite sides of the rectangle, and it has the column indices starts from 0 and goes till floor of R by 2, and each column here will contribute how many points? Let us see that. Say here this angle is 30 degree, so that means this angle is 60 degree, and so it will be floor of root 3 into I and twice of that. So a top floor of root 3 by root 3I, and here bottom floor of root 3I. So total twice floor of root 3I plus 1, because we need to consider the points on this line as well, and twice of that. So let us go back to the lemma, and this is our total result. So this twice, because there are 2 isosceles triangles, and this will be the number of pixels present on the rectangle. Now, the first theorem is in the collection of hexagons with odd radii, the density is maximized at the unique radius. We have proved our claim for all algebraically for all r greater than equal to 11, and for all odd radii r less than 11. We are presenting here in this table for your reference, and we are claiming that our claim is correct. And the first hexagon with unit radius has the highest density of 1.154701. These are first few hexagons with even integer radii. We can see here that this case is basically similar to the first one, with the special difference that in this line you can see the pixels are present because this is the hexagon with even radii. So the pixels will be present on the vertical side of the axis aligned rectangle, and so you can see the formula is just changed here. Instead of r in the previous lemma, it will be r plus 1. In the similar manner for the triangles, the columns will go from I equal to 0 up to not floor of r by 2 but floor of r by 2 minus 1. And we need to remember that for even radii, floor of r by 2 is equal to r by 2, and that is the case. Again, our next theorem, in the collection of hexagons with even radii, the maximum density is achieved for radii 2 and 6. This result we have proved algebraically for all r greater than equal to 14, and for all even radii less than 14. We are presenting here all the densities for your reference and claiming that our proof is correct for radii 2 and 6. This is the highest density for even radii. Now finally we are concluding that in the collection of hexagons with integer radii, the density is maximized at the unit radius with the value of 1.154701. Next comes the case of of the real radii, the hexagons with real radii. Now, with your permission, I'm taking the, yeah. So here we can see that this is the hexagon with real radii. Pardon my terrible drawing skills. So this is the axis aligned rectangle here, and this is my radius r. Sorry, this is my center C, and this is my real radii r. Where this r we are putting here floor of r plus f. So this is my, so these are the say points, grid points, and then this is my f till this. So what is this? This is my floor of r. Okay, so how we are calculating the number of points present in this axis aligned rectangle? Again, the rectangle has the dimension of r cross root 3r. Why root 3r? Because here this is root 3 by 2 r, here it is root 3 by 2 r. So the number of points present here will be floor of root 3 by 2 r. Here the number is floor of root 3 by 2r. So twice floor of root 3 by 2r and plus 1 for the considering the points on this slide. So plus 1. So and then how many columns will be there? It will be floor of r columns. So in this case, our results will vary depending upon whether the floor of r is odd or even. So you can see here the example where floor of r is odd. So we can see that this is the total number of pixels present in the axis aligned rectangle plus how many will be in one triangle. So here you can see that this is F and this is say I for floor of R. So it will go from I equal to 0 to floor of R by 2 and I plus F root 3 floor of that twice of that because on the top and on the bottom. So and one side it is floor of I plus F root 3 twice because at the top and the bottom plus 1 because of this for this line. So this will be and twice of that because there are two isosceles triangles. So total number of pixels present here will be this. In case of when floor of R is even, we can see here that the pixels will be present again on this vertical side. So in this case, this will be floor of R plus 1. Floor of R plus 1. It will be that. In the similar manner from here, it will be from I equal to 0 till floor of R by 2 minus 1. We need to remember that when floor of R is odd, it is floor of R by 2. When floor of R is even, it is floor of R by 2 minus 1. In either case, this simplifies to, that means t. So this simplifies to this value, floor of R minus 1 by 2. And so our lemma we are showing you for your reference how to count the number of pixels, the number of pixels in a hexagon of real radii. And that is the case, and different cases are shown for floor of R odd or even. Now when we are trying to prove that result, the theorem, so here are some real hexagons up to radii 6. You can say that because these are the real hexagons, there will be infinite number of real hexagons present. But we need to remember that these are all the candidate hexagons for maximum density. So these are the only hexagons which has at least one pixel present on its boundary. So here is the next theorem. In the collection of hexagon with real radii, the maximum density is attained uniquely when the radius is this 2 by root 3, that is in the second row with the pixel containment 5. And the proof is real a bit involved. So here we can see that. So let's draw this once more. I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, 2 more minutes, please. So this is my rectangle R, and this R has the dimension of twice R. So this is my center C here, twice R cross root 3R. Why root 3R? Because this is root 3 by 2R, this is root 3 by 2R. So how many pixels present here? We need to remember that this is real radii, floor of R here and floor of R here. So number of pixels present is 2 of floor of R plus 1. Because all the pixels on this slide you need to consider plus 1 multiplied by twice floor of root 3 by 2R R plus 1. So this is the total number of pixels present in this rectangle. Now we have defined, you can see 4 right angle triangle TI, where I will go from 1 to 4. And how we are defining those TIs? The smaller side of the TI will be aligned with the rectangle, and the hypotenuse will be aligned with the slanted side of the hexagon. Here, along with TI, we are also defining TI dash. So TI dash is the set of pixels present in the interior of the TI, and along with the smaller side of the triangle, right angle triangle. So how many pixels will be present in one of the TI? So in one of the TI, the number of pixels, so here the dimension will be r by 2 cross root 3 by 2r. This will be the case. So when a line of real line with real length x, the minimum number of pixels present will be ceiling of x plus 1. So the number of pixels present here will be half into ceiling of r by 2 minus 1 cross ceiling of root 3 by 2r minus 1. So this will be the pixels present in this TI. Now we are making an interesting claim here.
So please try to conclude.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Just 1 minute more. Yeah. So we claim that math baby TI minus 1. So what is math baby TI? Math baby TI is the set of pixels present in TI, and math baby TI dash means the set of pixels present in TI dash. So first case is that if this hypotenuse does not contain any points on it, then obviously TI dash is equal to TI. At the right hand side inequality proved. In case there is at least 1 pixel on its hypotenuse, we claim that there cannot be any more pixels. I am sorry, I am getting 1 more minute. So we are claiming that we cannot have any more pixels on it. And why so? Because if there is any more pixel, these all are grid points. So we can always draw a right angle triangle say TR, whose these points, those smaller sides will be integral. But we need to remember that this slanted side of the hexagon will always create an angle of 30 degrees with the vertical side. So the ratio of the two smaller sides of the triangle will be tan 30, that is 1 by root 3 or its inverse. So it is not possible that two smaller sides both will be integral. And that is why we can say that there cannot be maximum, there can be at least maximum 1 pixel can be present on the hypotenuse of this TI, and so TI dash will be greater than equal to half of that minus 1. We are using this inequality here, and I'm just saying that what is the inside behind this. So number of pixels present in a hexagon will be the number of maximum number of pixels present, total number of pixels present on the rectangle minus minimum number of pixels present in all total of all those TI dash. So you algebraically we have proven that till for greater than equal to 6, our result is correct, and for less than 6, our result is for your reference here. For time constant, I cannot go to the detail of the minimum density proof, but the proof technique is similar. You can read our paper. We are just going through the result that in the collection of hexagon with odd radii, hexagon with radius 9 has minimum density, and radius 8 has minimum density in case of even radii. And here in the collection of hexagon with real radii, the one with minimum density has the radius just less than 1 plus 1 by root 3. I need to remind you once again that the candidate hexagon for minimum density will be the one which does not have any points on its boundary. So it is just less than that. And these are our future work. We are already working on the maximum and minimum density extremas of hexagons whose center is real, and also the radii who can be real or integer. This is our bibliography. Thank you. And apologies, ma'am, for taking 1 more minute.
So time for only one question. There's one question.
Would you generalize this to a regular polygon?
No, sir. We are working with first with LP balls, and then we started working equilateral triangle and hexagon. Not for any regular polygon, we did not work on it. We are working with pentagon. That is also another part. Here, regular pentagon. We are also working with all regular bases. third dimension for some of the basic shapes, like for diamond and octahedron for square cube or three-dimensional hypercube. We have worked on 3D circle, but that is not published yet. And for hexagon, we are starting like completing first the tutorial. That is not published yet.
In the interest of time, let's thank Anjana Basu for the talk. Let's move on to the last paper of this session. It's going to be online, I'm told.
Yes, yes.
This is paper number 21 on the Rick number of series parallel graphs and planar bipartite graphs by Sheikh Ruhul Asgar of Buet and Mohammad Saidur Rahman of Buet. It's going to be presented by Sheikh Ruhul Asgar. Trying to connect online. Welcome to ICAA, and thanks for waiting. We've been running a little late. Can you hear us?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Can
So-
you hear me?
Yes. Could you
Yeah.
please show me the presentation and start?
Yeah, thank you very much for giving me the chance to present my work here. And I'm starting my screen share. So is my screen is well visible?
Yes, yes. Can you make it presentation mode? Yes.
Yes, yes.
Perfect. Please go on.
Okay. Greetings, everyone. Um, I hope you are doing well. My name is Asghar, and today I'm presenting the paper titled on the Rick number of C-spiral graphs and planar bipeptide graphs. This research has been conducted under the graph drawing and information visualization lab, department of CSC, BUET. So before I introduce the concept of Rick number, let us first understand the concept of a stack layout of graph. So what is a stack layout of graph? Given a graph G with vertex A, B, C, D and edge E1 to E5 and a vertex ordering of this graph. So what is a vertex ordering? Vertex ordering is a total order of its vertex set. So here we can assume that here is a vertex ordering A to B to A precedes B, precedes C, precedes D, and A is stack. So we can call that A the graph G admits a on stack layout if we can process all the vertex sequentially in this order. So what does processing a vertex means? To process a vertex means to pop existing edge from the stack and push new edge into the stack. For example, if we process this graph using this order and this stack, we can first process the vertex A, and to do so, we can push the edge E1 and E2 into the stack, and then to process the vertex B, we can uh, pop the edge E1 and push E3 and E4 into the stack, and to process the vertex C, we will pop the edge E3 and push E5, and at D we will pop all the existing edges. So we can see that this graph can be processed using a stack, and we can call that this graph admits a on a stack layout. Now, given k data structure formally and a graph G, our goal is to find a vertex ordering and a partition of edges into pages such as E1 to EK, such that for each page EI and each edge UV is processed by the underlying data structure DI. So that means insert the edge UV to DI at U and remove it from DI at V. And if we can do so, we will call that the graph G admits K D linear layouts of graph. So we can use various linear data structure to process the edges, such as a stack queue, restricted input queue or RIC, and uh, mixed, which is any combination of the mentioned linear data structure. This concept has several applications, such as defining various graph parameters, such as cut width, bandwidth, path width, and VLSI design, graph drawing, sorting permutations, and compact graph encoding. Now, from a stack layout of a graph, we find another concept called a stack number. So consider this graph K to 3. This graph admits a 3 stack layout. Here the red edges will be inserted in the first stack, and the blue edges will be inserted in the second, and the green edges will be inserted in a third stack. This graph also admits a 2 stack layout in A, B, C, D, E order, with red edges in the first stack and the blue edges in the second. But this graph does not admit a one-stack layout. That means we cannot process all the edges using a single stack in any given order. So the minimum number of stack required for this graph is 2. So we can conclude that the stack number of K to 3 is 2. So from a stack number, if we consider RIC, restricted input queue, instead of a stack, we find RIC number. So in restricted input data structure, we can push only in the head of the data structure, and we can pop from both the head and the tail of the data structure. It is a kind of a DQ with some restriction applied. Now, in this field, we already know the characterization of graph that admits a on-RIC layout. These are the graph with so-called uh, a strongly on-sided sub-Hamiltonian path. That is a Hamiltonian path with some with a kind of embedding such that each edge will leave the same side of the plane. And a little bit about the upper bound of complete graph and complete bipartite graph, and which in case of complete graph, the upper bound is n minus 1 by 3 floor, and which is up to tight for k equals to 30, which is using solver. And in other graph classes, the result in unknowns. So in our research, we found that the RIC number of series parallel graph and planar bipartite graph class, in the both cases, uh, the RIC number of these graph classes is 2. Now, so the first section, the RIC number of series parallel graph class. So what is a series parallel graph? So a series parallel graph is a basic series parallel graph is a two vertex connected with an edge, and we can combine two series parallel graph through a series connection or a parallel connection, and we will find another bigger series parallel graph. So this forms a recursive definition of series parallel graph class. Now, the main theorem here is that the RIC number of series parallel graph is 2. The proof involves 3 steps. The first of all, establishing the upper bound for the graph class, which is 2. It can be proved by the uh, stack number, and then we have constructed a graph G7 derived from a gadget Si, and for the graph G7, we have shown that this graph does not admit a on-RIC layout. That means the lower bound of RIC number of G7 is at least 2, and as the upper bound is also 2, we can conclude that the RIC number of G7 is exactly 2, and this will conclude for the series paragraph class that the RIC number of series paragraph class is also 2. Now, the gadget Si is consist of two twins, Si and Ti, which is connected by a twin edge and 5 connectors, X1 to X5. And we have constructed G7 by repeating these gadgets 7 times, and with two additional vertex, terminal vertex A and B, where A is connected to both the twins S and T, and B is connected to only the TI of the twins. Now, the main challenge is here, how can we possibly enumerate all possible vertex ordering to check that if all the edges can be processed by a rig data structure. To do so, we have uh, um, categorize the all possible permutation of vertex ordering in three category based on the partial order exists between a vertex A and a twin Si and Ti. So in a given order, the A can be before Si and Ti, A can be in between Si and Ti, and it can be after Si and Ti. So as by pigeonhole principle, in a given vertex ordering, there will be at least one of these configuration with at least three of the twin. Based on this fact, we have derived a lemma such as if a vertex ordering contains UV with an edge and D1 to D4 in between, such that D1 to D4 represents two twins S and Ti in any particular order, and the edge between U and V is forced to removed from the tail of the rig data structure. This configuration will not admit a on-rig layout. That means we cannot process all the edges in this configuration in any particular uh, order. So from this, using this lemma, we have shown that for each configuration, the configuration does not admit a on-rig layout. So the rig number of G7 is at least 2, and so as the upper bound is also 2, we concluded that the rig number of the C-spiral graph class is 2. Now the planar bipartite section. Here, what is a planar bipartite graph class? It is both plane and bipartite. That means it can be drawn on a plane without edge crossing, and it does not contain any odd cycle. Now, the main theorem is also similar. The Rick number of planar bipartite graph is 2, and the proof technique is somewhat similar with the C-spiral graph section, but here we had faced much more challenges. And we have constructed a graph G19 from a similarly gadget MI, and we have shown that the G19 does not admit a on-rig layout, and from that we concluded that the rig number for these graph classes is also 2. So the gadget MI is similar to the gadget SI, with only difference is that there is no edge between SI and TI. So that kind of give us a more challenging approach to uh, uh, find a configuration. Basically, in this case, we do not have a configuration where we can say that if the
No, Asghar, we can't hear you. No. I think there's a problem with the connection. No. Yes.
Sorry for the interruption.
No problem, please try to conclude. You were showing us the
uh,
G19.
yeah, okay.
3 minutes left.
Okay, so I'm resuming from here.
Yes.
The G19 is constructed by repeating 19 gadget with additional two vertex A and B, where A is connected to uh, both SI and TI, and B is connected also connected to the SI and TI. Now for this graph G19, we also can configure all possible permutation in some cases, such as based on the partial order exists between the vertex A and B, terminal vertex, and the twin vertex SI and TI. So we can the SITI can be in between A and B, or A and B can be in between SI and TI. Also, SI and TI can be before A and B, and so on and so forth. So, in conclusion, we have for each of these cases, we have kind of simulate and uh, develop theory lemmas, so that and shown that for each of these case the partial order does not or the vertex or ordering does not admit a on-Rick layout, and from there we can conclude that for this graph the Rick number is also 2. So in conclusion, the Rick number for both series parallel graph class and the planar bipartite graph class is 2. Now, a future work includes determining the lower and upper bounds of Rick number for various graph classes, particularly for planar graphs. And one conjecture is that Rick number of planar graph is 2, which remains to proven or disproven. Another interesting direction can be a mixed layout number of planar graphs, including whether the planar bipartite graphs admit both on stack and on
One
queue
minute
layout.
left.
And there is another conjecture which is remain to proven or disproven, that planar bipartite graph admits a on stack and on queue layout. And there is a huge similarity between a restricted input queue and on stack plus on queue. Basically, on stack and on queue kind of simulate the rig data structure. So this is also relevant in this event. And I would like to actually acknowledge we thank Codecrafter International Limited for their fund in this research, and thank you for your attention. Any questions are welcome. Yes.
I have a quick question. So the RIC data structure is relatively new, and these I mean, I'm not too much familiar with graph drawing, but what I understood that these data structures are important in trying to do graph layout. And here as you said, that you can emulate a RIC data structure with a one stack and a one queue. If that be the case, is it just the space that you're gaining on using a RIC data structure as opposed to one stack or one queue? Why would somebody want to use a RIC data structure? That's what I'm
Okay.
wondering.
Okay, but kind of related, but not quietly, because if we use on stack and on queue, we have to use two data structure first of all, and it is kind of a subset of on stack plus on queue. So um, is a subset of that means the graph classes that admits a on a rig layout must uh, ad, will admit a on stack plus on queue layout, but the other way is not proven or disproven yet. I mean,
So there's no counterexample that if you have a, let's say, K read number graph class, whether you can have similarly for one stack, one queue. I mean, K stack, K queue.
yeah.
And one related question for the mixed stack, do you need to have, I mean, here you've written 1, 2, 3 stack and 1, 2, is that 48 queue?
Because uh, for planar graph, we already know that the stack number is 4 and queue number is 49. So if we are admit 4 stack, then it will automatically uh, allow us to process all the edges and 49 queue. So
Okay. Since there are no more questions, thank you very much, Asgar. And
okay.
let's, thank you. So we come to the end of this session, and thanks for attending this session. And over.
This brings us to the end of the first technical session today. I would request Professor Dinabandhu Bhandari sir to please felicitate ma'am. We will break for lunch now. We are running a little behind the schedule, so kindly assemble back at 2:30 p.m. for the second session.